Ah, Kirby 64. Such a charming and simple game. You attack with the B button, what could go wrong? Okay, now what? Kirby games are super simple in their controls, so much so that you can often play them with one hand. Kirby 64's attacks all use the same button. So what if we took that away? Could you still beat the game? No, the answer is no, absolutely not. This game involves combat or something, and you can't really proceed with the game without dealing some damage. So the question instead becomes, how much? How many times do we need to press that button? That is the question we're going to answer today. But, before we can do that, I need to address something. Without spoiling too much, as if this game isn't 26 years old, there are some abilities that create a bit of a dilemma with this challenge. Some abilities, like Plasma, will continue to deal damage as long as you hold the button. This sounds like it would trivialize a challenge like this, but let me tell you something about those ability combos. Every ability like this has a massive drawback in reducing your movement options or halting your movement altogether. You couldn't use these abilities for more than a few moments before you'd be forced to stop. So for that reason, and to keep this challenge simple, this is allowed and still only counts as one B press. Real quick, subscribe if you enjoy, and now we can begin. Our first destination is Planet Popstar, and it's here that we'll get to grips with exactly how this challenge limits us. The first issue is flying. Not really flying itself, but the complete inability to cancel it. Normally, you puff up to ascend, and to descend, you exhale, by pressing B. Puffing up is a risky move now because it makes you slow and vulnerable until you touch the ground. But with our inability to attack, the little exhale projectile could come in handy. But we also have this, the slide kick, which is much cooler and allows us to easily deal with a variety of grounded enemies. With all of these tools, we storm into the first mini-boss and... it turns out that both the slide kick and exhale do absolutely nothing to mini-bosses. With no ability, the only way you can damage this guy is by spitting the small enemies at him. That would take 6 total B presses, inhaling and exhaling 3 enemies. But we can do better. If we stand right in front of the big NZ and throw a boomerang, it stays out long enough to stall out its iframes and damage it again on the way back. So we can defeat it with just 3 B presses, 1 to get the cutter and 2 for attacking. At the end of the level, we meet What'll Do. Cutter can once again cut our B presses down to half what they'd normally be. But this is when I realized we could do even better. I created this spreadsheet of all the ability combos, and one of these is going to completely change this challenge. Say hello to the Fire Sword. This ability is going to be our lifeline. Pressing B pulls out the sword. While it's out, you can press B to swing, up to hold it upwards, and B again to throw it. All of these attacks are nice, but the real value of this ability is this. Just holding it. The sword has an active hitbox, and Kirby just holds it. Conveniently, Fire and Cutter are among the first abilities in the level. I'll just say this now, this is going to be our strategy. Pressing B once to hold the sword out and dealing damage entirely passively. But if you think this is going to make the challenge too easy, this is what happens if I take any damage. If I get damaged at all, the sword disappears and I would have to press B to pull it out again. Against Big NZ, we can defeat it using only 3 B presses. Okay, so it didn't save anything yet, but once we get back to What'll Do, this time it only takes 1 single B press to finish the fight. Assuming you don't get hit. The Quiet Forest is easy with our Burning Blade, surely all these dry leaves aren't a fire hazard. And we reach Adelaine, who creates a variety of enemies. With the right positioning and a fair bit of patience, they can all be defeated with 1 B press. With her spawns all defeated, she leaps into the fray for one final brutal fight and she's dead. King Dedede's castle introduces Ghost Knights with a deceptive range and can't be leapt over with a single jump. But otherwise, we just reach the top and fight King Dedede. The ability to hold the sword upward proves vital, and we move on with 1 more B press. The world boss is just Wispy Woods, who expectedly doesn't hold up well against fire. Rockstar is next, and with this sword, we're starting to make light work of these levels, aside from flying. Mini-bosses only take a single B press, and ground dashes deal with lesser enemies. As we get to the end of stage 2, we're joined by the King. The main mechanic of King Dedede is his hammer, which is used to break walls, and we need to break 4 of them in order to escape. In stage 3, this split path leads you to a crystal shard only if you go left, so normally you'd want to go left. But that path also contains a mini-boss, the Big Fishbone, so in this case we'll actually go right. And thankfully, swimming isn't made any more difficult without the B button. Stage 4's second crystal shard is supposed to require the light bulb ability, but there's nothing stopping you from spending 10 minutes trying different combinations. The world's boss is Pix. The first phase is just avoiding its attacks, but after reaching the top, it's time to draw the sword. By holding the sword up, the blocks will hover into it. Conveniently, when one is destroyed, it becomes intangible. This is important before they start charging around the arena to create an opening to avoid damage. So with that, Pix is dead with 1 B press, and we travel to Aqua Star. The Big Tick, yes that's its name, seems like perfect foil for the burning sword. Big Canny is a bit less so, just because of how annoying these little ones are. Stage 4 is entirely underwater, but thankfully Kirby doesn't care about that and the sword works anyway. This little pocket in the mini-boss room gives us a nice spot to defeat the big blowfish, yes that's its name, and now, Acro. I hadn't really planned for these bosses in advance, but if you played this game before, you might remember its second phase. This phase can be a problem for abilities that can't attack downwards, and the fire sword is one of these abilities. It's held sideways, but by camping the bottom of the screen, it still works. That brings us to Neo Star. Things are really ramping up. Or they should be, but honestly we're getting into things and levels are breezing by. This isn't Pokemon, so Big Galbo doesn't resist fire, and Stage 2 is mostly platforming, until this mini-boss room. Most mini-boss rooms use 1 B press, but with so many enemies here, how many do we need? 0. Because this is the only ambush mini-boss room, so these are actually lesser enemies and can be defeated with a slide kick. In Stage 3, the block shape was fun to make without the B button, but the highlight of this world is Stage 4, the volcano. Halfway through this stage, we're once again joined by King Dedede, and this means we're going to need to break walls. That really is his job in this game. But this time, there's an interesting mechanic to take advantage of. Some of these pillars take 2 hits to destroy, but by holding the B button to charge, you can destroy them with 1 single hit. This is basically the only use this mechanic has, but it can even be done while jumping to break both parts of this pillar at once. Escaping from the eruption without the ability to cancel flight was interesting, and the boss of Neo Star is Magman. The range of the fire sword and the ability to jump while holding it makes it quite useful here even casually. This is especially true in its second phase because I guess it just doesn't have a hitbox near the ground. I'm not sure how hitting its tentacle things damages it, but hitting its lower body doesn't. And from there, we've reached Earth. Or I guess it's called Shiver Star, but we all know what it really is. The first stage's mini-boss is pretty interesting. The fire sword can reveal the boss's crystal shard, but you can't reach it with the sword out. So you need to hold the sword up to break the icicle, and then defeat Big Chili. But hold on, you need to make sure one of the frigidest bird things is alive to damage you and get rid of the sword so you can fly. Stage 2 and 3 pose little issue, but Stage 4, the amazing factory level, is the last time we control King Dedede. This is the most we need to use his hammer as well, carefully busting a ton of gates along the way. We also can't deal with the enemies, besides just damage tanking into them. I wouldn't say this was a terrible experience. The big Burnus is easy, but then you have to damage yourself to put the sword away so you can escape. And the final boss of the penultimate world, the robot. HRT or whatever it's called. In its first phase, it can be damaged during its single arm swing by carefully timing a jump. The two-handed slam, though, is the easiest opportunity for damage, and lets us quickly get to the second phase. The positioning here works well for holding the sword backwards, but HRE's hitbox is deceptively large. That said, he's not much of a problem, and leads us to the final world, Ripple Star. The first stage of Ripple Star is a remix of the first level of the game, with harder enemies. That means we still need 1 B press for the mini-boss, but there's no Waddle Doo, so the level just ends. The underground stage doesn't have any mini-bosses, and sadly we can't break the pillars with the invincibility candy. Stage 3, however, is probably the most action the sword has gotten in this entire challenge, a series of enemy rushes. I've played this game so many times with so many abilities, and honestly I don't think any ability makes easier work of these fights. Just look at this. In fact, it was so much fun, it didn't occur to me until afterwards that you can just beat all of these with no ability. The last 2 rooms have a ton of flying enemies, so that only took like an hour. Since this world only has 3 regular stages, that means we've now reached the final boss. The boss I was worried about, and the big challenge of this run, Miracle Matter. So why was I concerned about this? Its mechanic is being immune to damage except for that of the same type it's currently using. So while it's using its spike attack, it can't be damaged by cutter, or neutral attacks, only by spike. So I was concerned this fight would become a huge B-press sink as I just consume every ability. But this was not the case. In fact, this fight took a lot of thought. You can damage Miracle Matter with the same type of attack, but that includes ability combos that feature that type. Since we already have Fire Sword, we can destroy all of its fire health, and by avoiding damage in between, we can also take out all of its cutter health. But with those abilities gone, this sword's job is done. It's been the perfect tool and a valuable asset. Thank you, Fire Sword, you were great. But what do we do next? This is where that spreadsheet I made actually comes in handy. Looking at these abilities, one stands out. One that is almost never used. Snowflake. It's not often used because it sucks. When you attack, you can't move, jump, or do anything. You just become a giant snowflake. But this snowflake has an active hitbox, and sticks around as long as you hold the button. By inhaling just one of the ice things, and jumping into one of the spike things, we can get the ability combo. Then we can destroy its spike health, and in a true matter of miracles, Miracle Matter immediately used ice next. Now it's down to 3 abilities. Looking at the chart, Bomb doesn't look good. None of its abilities could damage more than once per B press. But that leaves Rock and Plasma, and by sheer luck, that looks promising. The Volt Tether ability also has an active hitbox. However, it also has a tendency to disappear when the rock comes back. But this enclosed room is perfect for it, so with one use, it destroyed both the stone and plasma forms. And that leaves only one ability left. With nothing else to use, 2 more B presses destroy its final form and finish the fight. In spite of my fears, Miracle Matter only took a total of 9 B presses to defeat. And that wraps up the story of Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards. It took a total of only 62 B presses to reach the end credits, with 21 of those from Shiver Star, mostly due to that King Dedede section. In fact, King Dedede was responsible for 29 of the game's total B presses. So let me deal with the elephant in the room. This wasn't a 100% playthrough, it was only the bad ending. Many of the crystal shards I didn't get would just be boring B presses to grab the required ability, and I don't want to even think about what O2 would be like in this challenge. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I decided to tackle something a bit shorter, but this turned out to be more interesting than I expected. If you want to see more, subscribe I guess, and I'll see you next time.